Hello, Just Gem here and welcome, or indeed welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be finally trying 3 Beauty Moon Cosmetics palettes. Now I have tried Beauty Moon before because I've had the subscription boxes, but I have not yet tried one of the full-sized palettes that the brand does. I have got Mantra 1 and 2. And these were released together. They're a duo. You can buy them individually if you would like to. I purchased them as a bundle. And then I also picked up Cosmology, which is an older palette that they have reformulated. And this is one that I was really keen to try. This was the colour story that kind of really caught my eye, which is interesting because I think, funny enough, this is the colour story that I struggled with the most. Well, struggles perhaps not the right word, but it pushed me out of my comfort zone a bit more than the other two did. That's what I would say. That's what I've got on my eyes now, actually. Cosmology there. I think if I hold it that way, it's not quite as washed out. There we go. So I'm going to show you some swatches. What I would say is some of the mattes in here are quite dry. So Neptune is quite dry and it's like it had a bit of an odd film over the top. I'd say maybe Neptune is the one with the driest formula in this palette here. But the shimmers are like they're quite sort of soft but not overly so, and they lay down really nicely. So I do really like the shimmers in Cosmology. So that's going to be the third look. Then the first look that's going to be coming up, it's Mantra 1, and that's Mantra 1 there. So the formula in here is pretty consistent across the mattes, I would say. Then you've got a number, in fact, of satiny shades, which I'm not entirely convinced about, and then the shimmers, the shimmers in here I like. So Ethereal, Zenith, Oracle and Celestial, they're really nice. I like those. They're the slightly chunkier formula, but they smooth out really nicely. And then last but by no means least is the Mantra 2 palette. And that's what that looks like on the inside. And this is a very sort of fiery and earthy, fiery colour story, I would say. Yeah, earthy with a hint of fire. I do like that one. Only 2 of those satiny shades, which I'm quite grateful for. Really lovely colour story, and yeah, the shimmers in there, same. A couple of the chunkier ones, a few of the smooth ones, but overall, really like that one. Let's just get straight into the looks. So it's going to be Mantra 1, Mantra 2, Cosmology. have look number 1 complete, and this is using the Mantra 1 palette. What I've tried to do here, or what I thought made the most sense, was just to split the palette down in half, and I've got one look on each eye based on each half of the palette. I don't know if you saw, while I was applying it, I used a brush that was too big basically, and I got a whole heap of the shade, I think it's Thrive, under my eye, so I just went off camera and tidied that up a little bit. And these are the finished looks. So this is the more purpley side of the palette, sort of purpley pink, and then this is the greeny blue side of the palette. That's the purpley eye on its own there, and this is the bluey greeny eye on this side. Do you have a favourite? Do you? When it comes to the formulas, it's a mix in here. So you've got your mattes, and then you've got some satin type shades. Mystic, Clairvoyant, Chakra and Thrive are more satiny. Then you've got Aura, which is pretty intense shimmer, and then same as Zenith really, and then Ethereal, Oracle and Celestial. They look to be a similar formula, and they're the kind of intense shimmer shades with a bit of a shift to them. There you go. Mantra 1. Mantra 2 next. These are the finished 2 looks from Mantra 2. You've got the greeny side, greeny gold side, and then the fiery side. I'm going to call that the fiery side. I will say the satins, maybe, I don't know if it's just a case of sort of getting used to the formula, but the satins I found a little bit harder to apply. So the green that I've kind of got on the outside here, it's a shimmer satin formula, and I think I used my finger, but then I did go in with a flat brush that I sprayed, and then I went over that, and I think that did give a bit more intensity. So I'm just going to kind of practice a bit more and get it down how to use that satin formula to the best of its capabilities. But I mean, it came out nice. Like, it's still a really pretty green shade, and then I just really like this eye. I just think it's really striking and fun, and I really like this. And I think this look is quite bonfire-esque. It reminds me, or not reminds me, but I imagine that these are 2 looks that you could possibly get from Bonfire, from Dominatrix, or something close, And I say this because I'm trying to talk myself out of Bonfire. I'm doing this on a regular basis, and every time I feel I have succeeded, someone else posts a look that I really like and it makes me want it all over again. I'm going to take some pictures of this and wash it off so I can come back with the third look. Oh, before I do that, which eye is your favourite? Do you like the greeny side here? Or do you like the fiery side here? Let me know. Okay, final palette is Cosmology. Here we are, final look, and this is with Cosmology. I realise that they're a bit similar this time. I do try to do two different looks, but I was just looking at the colours in the palette, and these are the colours that I was drawn to. So I have used different shades on each eye, but they have a similarity to them. Still different, but closer than I normally tend to do. But this is just where my eyes were drawn in this particular palette. I think the formula is probably the nicest in this one. I felt that all of the shimmers were smooth and I want to say the same, if not a similar formula to each other. At least the ones I use, they feel... yeah, I think they're closer in here than in the others. I think so. But there we have it. So this is kind of... yes, they do look really quite similar, but that's more sort of bluey purple, I'd say. And then this is kind of pinky bluey goldy. Pinky bluey goldy? Yeah. And I've tried to use, that is perhaps not as bright as it needs to be for an inner corner highlight. That's Orion on the inside here. I think if it was a brighter yellow that would be better, but I was just curious, so I went with it. There we go. You know the drill. Do you have a favourite eye? Let me know. I've zoomed you out because I'm going to give you some first impressions now. And overall, what do I think? Which one would I say was my favourite? Well, based on these two looks, even though the pictures I just had to look at them again. The pictures I took with this palette are horrific, so I don't think they're ever going to see the light of day. But I think this one might be my favourite, which I suspected it would be. Even though the other one is more typically blue, purple, green. I always forget to switch this off when I show these palettes because it's very washed out otherwise. So yeah, even though the other one is strictly more blue, purple, green, there's just something about this one that I'm more drawn to. And I think I would probably, and can you guess what I'm about to say here? Can you guess? I think I would like this one a bit more if there was a bit of depth to it. I think this is actually quite mid. There aren't even shades that are like too light or anything like that. Normally I look at a palette and I would say that's too light, I'd never reach for that. I'd get rid of that and I'd add a deeper shade. These are just all very mid. There's nothing that's too light that I would get rid of as such. It's just lacking a little bit of depth. So maybe if Verve was a richer, deeper purple, almost I feel that colour but in a matte, and then maybe this a more intense purpley shimmer perhaps. Then you've got Celestial. I don't know. It's just it's mid. They all show up, they all work. That's not a problem. But I think I would just want something a little deeper. Navy blue or a really dark purple or a deep forest green in there somehow. Even though it's like not my favourite, there is still something about this colour story that I really like, and it probably is because, you know, blue, purple, green. Standard for me, really. And then Cosmology, maybe it's because I was just so used to the format of Mantra 1 and 2. When I did come to do this one, it threw me a little bit, and I wonder if that's why the looks have ended up looking a little bit on the samey side. Same but different. But this is the palette that I had been wanting since like day dot. This is the palette that I saw from the brand that made me look up and think, ooh, what do we have here? It was out of stock for ages. I think it was potentially even sort of discontinued, and then Tori came back and said, actually, I have revamped the formula and it's coming back out. And I was really excited because this was the colour story that caught my eye from the brand, so I am glad it came back. And I think I just need to play around with it a little bit more and get used to it. It's also got more shimmer, so this one's 50-50, and you've obviously, you can see there, you've got the mattes on the top and the shimmers on the bottom there. Yeah, just need to play around, I think, with that one a bit more, because it's a palette that pushes you a bit more out of your comfort zone than these two, I think. These Mantra 1 and 2 are more intuitive, I think. They're definitely, I think you can draw more looks out of it, or just because of the way it's arranged. Like, I'll pick on my fave, Mantra. You know, you can just go down the columns, for example. You can do a green look, you can do like an orangey look, you can do a yellowy look, a reddy look, and you can sort of go across and mix and match. Whereas I think Cosmology is potentially a little bit more intimidating. That's what I would say. Formula wise, the satins in Mantra 1 and Mantra 2, I want to play around a bit with those. So in here it's Primal, Siren, which I haven't used. So Primal's the green, which I did use, and Siren is there, which I haven't used there. They were just a bit harder to lay down, so maybe a stickier base, because I didn't use a base at all for that. For this one I was experimenting because I've picked up the Glitter Fix gel from Barry M, so I do have a glitter primer on, but funnily enough Cosmology doesn't have that formula in it. And then in Mantra it's, I want to say it's Chakra, Definite, I think it's got more in here. Maybe that's another reason why I'm not as drawn to it actually. Chakra, Thrive, Mystic, and possibly Clairvoyant, but Clairvoyant was, I think that was quite punchy, but these two were a little bit harder to place, just a little bit. So I've been eyeing Medusa, and I've held off from getting Medusa because I thought, well, you've got these three palettes. I placed this order all together because there's a Mantra bundle where you can get a discount if you buy these two together, and this was on a pre-order, so I ordered all three together. So these two came first, and then that one came to me when it was in stock. And I've just had a backlog of palettes, and I've just not been able to get around to them until now. And I thought, you cannot buy another palette from this brand when you haven't even tried the ones that you've got yet. Don't be ridiculous. But what I might do now is look at Medusa and see what the formula is in in that palette, how many of those satiny shades are in there. I'll also see how I get on with these satiny shades as I use this palette more, but at the moment I'm a bit about it. Just a little bit. Yeah, I think I just need a bit of practice. Once I figured out the best way to get it to lay down easily, that might be something that would work quite well with a NYX glitter glue, actually. I think that's a kind of formula that would be nice with that. I have used Beauty Moon before because I've had the subscription boxes, but this is my first time trying one of the bigger palettes. And they're nice. They are nice. I want to see how I get on. Definitely. I think if I had to put them in order, it would be Mantra 1, Cosmology, and then Mantra 2. I think that's how I would do it for the time being. But who knows, maybe as I use them a bit more, my ranking of those three might change. Who knows? As always, thank you for taking the time to watch. I hope that you have enjoyed this video, and I also hope to see you again in a video in the not too distant future. Take care. Bye.